Hello and welcome to another Factorio Base Tour. I'm Xterminator and I'm excited to have you joining me today for this one. And today we are covering a 6,000 science per minute pure vanilla belt base that is also, I must say, one of the most aesthetically appealing bases I've seen. Now, I think not last base tour, but the one before that, I did a tour of Derbermuse base, which I said is like the best looking base I've ever seen. This is a very close second or tied. It doesn't quite have like the concrete type of design and stuff that Derbermuse did, but the design is very similar. It is a bigger base. It is 6,000 science per minute. I believe Derbermuse was like, I want to say like 3.6 or something. So this is quite a bit larger, and there are some really cool, unique things going on here. So let's go ahead and get started. We are in the science area. I've backed away a little bit. There's a bunch of like flashing disco lights here that I know may be very unpleasant or even dangerous for some people, including myself. It makes me a little dizzy, but just a quick look, it's, yeah, it's very disorienting for me at least, but very cool nonetheless. This lab design is really, really cool. So what they've done, this is, by the way, is a base from Nonrectangular. I'm their character, and that's who submitted. So thank you very much for submitting it. We have all the labs here in this square, and it's actually loaded from 4 different sides. The labs are, and it's kind of a mix and match of different packs. So we have red, green, purple, and yellow on this side. We have blue, military, yellow, and purple again. And then we have space science, blue, and more military. And then we have more red, more green, more red, and more military here. And it's kind of all just, it's kind of rotational around here. And then they are all plugged in via belts and feed in. And the trains are color-coded, which is something I don't see very often, especially the cargo wagons. Now, I know this is a fairly new feature. You have been able to color locomotives for quite some time, but cargo wagons has not been around for too long, the ability to color them. And I really like what Nonrectangular has done here with this. And this is the case with basically all their trains that I've seen. Is the whole thing is just color-coded. It's very aesthetically appealing and then very just easy to tell at a glance what it is for the most part, aside from items that may share colors like green science and green circuits. But overall very nice, and all the trains in this map, aside from things like the fuel trains, are very large. These are two 16-2 trains. Unless I miscounted, I did count. I may have miscounted, but we can see 2 locomotives on each side very clearly. And if I can't actually zoom out far enough quite, but if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then that's the locomotives over there. So 16 cargo wagons per and 2 locomotives on each side. These are going to be fairly slow trains. They are fueled with nuclear fuel, though, which does help. And this is the size of train I think they use throughout the whole base for science, which is insane. The amount of science that fits in here is pretty ridiculous. You can see 128,000 in these, and I think that they're definitely not completely full, I don't think. This one may actually be. But something else you may be noticing is this thing kind of giving off the alert of destination full. So this base utilizes the train stop train limit throughout the base, or at least in several places. So they set the train stop limit to 1 of these science drop-offs. And this is a pretty new feature that was introduced in, I think, 1.1. So this basically means that, you know, when a train's here, it's saying that there's 1 train and that's the limit, and it's then not able to send any other trains here. And this is really useful. This is like a vanilla version of like Train Supply Manager or some stuff you could also do with circuits, but it's way more complicated than just doing it this way. And it works really quite well. I haven't fully experimented with it yet. I plan to do that in my current stream Megabase. But it's really cool to see it in action here, and we'll see it more throughout the base. So moving forward into the builds. First off, let's take a look at this whole map. This is a massive, massive map. There is... It is very symmetrical and stuff, which I really like. You know, there's very, you know, it's solar panels Three here, three here, three here, all in the same arrangement. These are all solar fields, all exactly the same. It looks very nice. The base, like zoomed out like this, looks super nice. It does look like biters are off. I don't see any. I don't see any remnants of anything. I don't see artillery exploration or artillery itself, and that's fine. I think that biters, especially on this, playing at this scale, really become just more of a nuisance than actually having any usefulness in the game. And we can see the patches are really, really rich. Some insane richness on these. And some of these definitely, I think, are these patches, at least the oil in some regards, are spawned in. Like this one doesn't look spawned in. This one definitely is because, I mean, obviously you don't get oil patches that generate like this naturally. Same with this is spawned in. But not all of, well, I think all the ones they're utilizing are. So what's interesting here is they are actually just utilizing basically a couple outposts of each, and that's it. So here, 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 and here is all of their outposts, and these are spawned in. So I guess, again, that's a matter of opinion. Some people really don't like that. Some people, I personally don't mind. There's no like mods used. These were spawned in, which technically is cheating, I suppose. But what I'm really interested in these bases is the design itself, not the fact that they spawned in out resource patches or not. It's not like they used like cheat mode chests and are just spawning materials out of that. Like they still have to have a train network and all the logistics involved with that. Again, which is what I find really interesting in bases. And while we're at these outposts, let's just look at these. So these are using direct mining into wagons. And this is a very, very UPS efficient, very good method once you have a high enough mining productivity, which as you can see, they do. They have an insane mining productivity. In fact, they have mining productivity 225. They're currently working on 226. And keeping in mind that it gives 10%. So the bonus, the mining productivity bonus they have is ridiculous. They have a 2,190% mining productivity, which is nuts because 100 mining productivity would be double already. It'd be producing double what it normally would. So over 2,000, ridiculous. Plus, they are all speed beaconed as well. Now, these patches are basically infinite, but even if they weren't, the productivity would basically make them infinite anyway. And they're all beaconed. It's not a solid line of beacons, just due to the way it needs to be spaced to have these all, beacon correctly. Even some of them are not beaconed the same amounts. Like this has 6 effect sources, this has 7, etc., etc. But overall, it seems to even out. And again, they are utilizing train stop limits on the outposts as well. So, basically saying this can have 2 trains, like at it or going to it, and then it won't allow any more. And they are all named the same, and that's something you can do with the train stop limit. That's the main point of it, is you can then name all your stuff the same. So, these are all just train stop stone, all of them, just exactly the same, using the train stop limit, which is really cool. Also, I really do like their naming scheme for stations and stuff. It is really self-explanatory without having too much text. Like if we see here, a lot of it is just using the rich text. So like stone brick stacker, stone to stone brick, just stone. And it's really just easy to see at a glance instead of having to read what it is. Again, more oil, same type of thing. All the trains appear to be basically the same length. This one looks a bit shorter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, maybe it's not. For some reason it did. And these all come in kind of meet onto the central rail system. This is a right-hand drive rail system. Just 2 lanes, but that's fine. And these trains are coming down. They do carry a very large amount of materials. This one well, it's moving, it's hard to see, but it carries a ton. And then we can start looking at the actual builds. So everything, as far as I can tell, in this base is belt-based. I don't really see any usage of bots. This whole thing is belt-based, which is pretty cool because we'll see some really, really good use of like belt weaving and just routing belts really well to, you know, achieve what needs to be achieved for some of these builds. So we may not look at every single one. Again, there's like multiples of them anyway. But if we start, I'd like to look at the basics. So iron and copper smelting. We can see a train just pulled in. There is some circuit network stuff going on here. This seems to be to just control well, they're not even connected to the inserters. It looks like it's just connected to here and then controls something within this. Trying to locate where that actually goes. It's connected to the combinators, which are connected to the chests, so it's reading it and then sending it here. And okay, it's going to the train stop. So this is, I believe, basically just telling the train stop, in a sense, like how much ore is here. And there's some fuel here. There's like a speaker as well for some sort of alarm, I'd imagine. So this delivers ore, and it's pretty straightforward. Smelting, obviously, being the simplest of things. It sends ore in on this belt that goes underneath all of it, and then outputs plate, which is, it can be a little deceiving because, you know, like this furnace is outputting to the left, but this undergrounds all the way through. We do actually see an additional belt used because these furnaces here have already filled half of this belt. So they come here, and then you can see that they are basically side-loaded and loaded onto here and moved over and continue on through over to here where the plate is then loaded. And again, the wagon's color-coded, which is very, very nice. Pretty easy to tell at a glance what this is, even if we didn't have the icons. Fairly simple loading systems here. You know, actually very simple. Basically almost just like a pyramid here for splitters. Now, I could be wrong. I'm under the impression that pulling directly from splitters is not necessarily the best thing. It seems to be working in this case. I tend to like to not pull directly from the splitters, but it does seem to be working okay here, nonetheless. So here's copper. Iron will be absolutely identical, so don't really need to spend a lot of time looking at that. But we have smelting on either side, with ore coming in on either side, and then, of course, the plate train in the middle. And if we take a look here, also utilizing the train stop limit, allowing 6 trains in this case. And you can kind of see where everything's going, so, and the status with the awesome new train, GUI and stuff. So iron to military is waiting there. It's waiting here, some are waiting here, etc. And then if we move over to steel, I found steel pretty interesting. So it's a direct ore to steel build, which is pretty standard on Megabases. That usually tends to be the most efficient. You will take the ore, it smelts into plate, and then the plate is directly inserted into the furnaces. And this is a, you know, pretty straightforward trend throughout this, is that it just continues through, makes plate into steel, which then outputs on this belt here, and it runs all the way along, and I'd imagine fills up over on this side here, which it does. 2 trains worth, in fact, or 2 stations worth, at least. Using a train stop limit of 2 for this. And then over here we have circuits. So the circuits are, again, fairly straightforward. Obviously require a few more belts because we have 2 inputs and then an output requiring a 3rd belt. So iron comes in here, copper comes in here, outputs to circuits here. And it comes on over and loads this train, which holds a massive amount of circuits. Huge amount of circuits. 8,000 per wagon, I believe, because circuits stack in 200s, and there's 40 slots per. And 8 times 16 is a lot. My math is a little rusty to do that instantly off the top of my head, but we should see here shortly how full that is. 128,000 circuits, which is a lot. And then if we come over the science builds, so there's more circuits here. It's so it's steel, and then circuit on left and right, and then military, and then blue science. So if we look at these science builds, military, again, pretty straightforward. Everything all the intermediates for the pack itself are made here. So, you know, they're making the wall here, the ammo here, the grenades here. They're not making them elsewhere and transporting them in. They are, of course, transporting the ingredients for those, but all the materials are here. We're spitting out science. Pretty straightforward, you know, fully productivity moduled. Interestingly, not fully beaconed. And that may just be due to the amount of space they need to weave belts, but this has basically, so there's 4 models in here. This has 9 beacons hitting it, so it's like, it's obviously more than 8 beacons, but it's not a full 12 beacon setup. So kind of interesting how they chose to do this. Now, all the science packs seem to be beacon the same. However, some of the other machines, like the grenades, for example, actually have an additional beacon, or yeah, an additional beacon, because this has 14 effect sources, this has 13, and then these are down to 12. So interesting how they chose to do this. Maybe it is just, maybe they really mapped it out, and you know, they're like, well, grenades take this long, we need an extra beacon here, these don't take as long, so we can spare a beacon here. And that is some super min-maxing there, if that's the case, which I very much applaud. And it's unloading materials from both sides. So again, these builds are very symmetrical, which I like basically throughout the whole base. Unloads materials both sides, loads in the middle, same side to side. Very nice there. So we have more steel up above this. You know, again, throughout the base, everything is very, I don't know if symmetrical is the right word to be using, but like steel here, steel here, steel in the middle, build, and then, you know, so on and so forth. So coming over to blue science, this has a bit of an interesting thing going on where we actually have belts now running vertically. So pipes are running vertically here for the engines, and it's actually multiple vertical lines. So pipe here, and then steel and gears running this way too. And that's actually really smart because, you know, they couldn't fit all the stuff necessarily running horizontally or the unloading for it probably. So they chose to go vertically for some of this, which is really smart because with blue belts you do have the reach to be able to do that. And then of course blue science is spitting out into the middle, I would imagine. Yes, and same on this side. And then we, so yeah, we have the unloading on all sides, and then some of it actually comes down here for more production, again making all the main intermediates here, and then it's sent back up vertically. So there's a lot about on this map, because in some cases we have like up down type of thing, almost backtracking. And then nice little concrete designs in the middle here. The junctions are pretty cool. Typically I'm not a fan of junctions like this, but they seem to have signaled them quite well in such a way that I don't really see any jams happening or anything here. This guy is simply just waiting. Might be waiting a while, but, or this actually seems to be maybe some sort of stacker into here. I think this may actually be a stacker waiting to go over here. So we have steel coming up to purple science. This is where some cool belt weaving comes into play. So blue belt everywhere that can be, but then to fit the things that are needed in here, they actually transition to red belt partway through to be able to weave red belt and blue belt in the same plane here, in the same line, because they have this blue belt of rail coming through, and then they also need this red belt with this stuff to continue through, and obviously if they used blue belt they couldn't have both. And then this comes over and goes right here, and then the rail belt comes over here and feeds in, spits out in the middle, very much the same throughout all these, unloading left and right. And again, I absolutely love these color-coded trains. Even things like the stone in the iron, which are, you know, basically they could have almost just left it the same. They did color-code it. It's a little hard to see maybe, but they did it nonetheless, which is really cool. And then more copper there, some oil. So oil is pretty interesting. They definitely max beacon this oil. This is like, this is full out. This is 16 beacons, in fact. And the reason you can fit 16, for anyone who doesn't know, is because the footprint of the refinery is bigger. You can only fit 12 beacons around an assembler. Like, that's the max, as far as I'm aware, that you can fit around an assembler. So you can fit 16 around refineries, and they've done that. They've maxed this out. And then it feeds in to all the chemical plants, which appear to be just, well, it would be an 8-beacon build, but they kind of throw some in here, and then this only takes 3 modules, so it's actually like a 9-beacon build. And this feeds in, they go into these storage tanks, which do have some form of wiring here. This is just kind of reading how much is in here, and then kind of telling these pumps to turn on and off. It's a pretty straightforward system. I'd imagine, this is just saying, like, you can pump if it's over this amount or under this amount. Pretty straightforward circuit conditions, so that's something even I can do. For those of you who don't know, I'm very bad with the circuit network, but even I can figure that out and do that. So they do have, this is a lot of tanks. Personally, this is more tanks than I'd like. Again, personally, it definitely works. I mean, we can look at the production menu. We haven't done this yet, but I was going to look at it more in depth here. They are doing 6,000 to more than 6,000 in some cases of every science. And obviously they're cranking out the science, the research itself. And so everything works, and performance is pretty good, where I was at like 13 earlier, so I'd say between 13 to 15 update, which is pushing it. I am a little bit below 60 UPS, but all things considered, this is pretty dang good, considering everything going on here. Again, I would prefer to not utilize as many tanks. I kind of see why they did. It just makes things simpler and just more straightforward, just directly into here instead of weaving pipes all over the place. And that maybe weaving pipes all over the place maybe would have been worse than the tanks anyway. So, it's kind of a toss-up until you like really get down and gritty and do the math and stuff. But it totally works. If it works, then that's awesome in my book. Same deal here, again, mirrored on this side. Same there. Purple science we looked at. Copper, stone is going to be very straightforward. One of the most straightforward things. Stone ore in, brick out, loading in the middle. Again, all belt based. And I think, so green science here. Green science has an interesting thing of belts coming around where it's kind of just encompassed on all 4 sides by belt, which totally works. And, well, this is the inserters, but still. It works. Everything is just zooming super fast. Like, this machine is cranking with the speed modules in it, and then the beacons as well. And then these are 8-beacon build here, or 10-beacon, sorry, 10-beacon build. Again, a little different than the military science. I don't know if that's intentional or just kind of happened to be that way. I want to say it's intentional. They are unloading here and then kind of sideways outputting it over this way to fill a full blue belt of circuits. Tons and tons of iron obviously is required for this, making the gears locally here. So very good there. Red circuit build, making the cable here and then belting it over and feeding quite a few of these with the cable, in fact. And, 2 cable machines, though. And normally, I would say don't belt cable. If you're building a belt-based factory, you almost need to. I would still prefer to do direct insertion. Like, I would prefer to belt the copper to the cable machines and then direct insert the cable to the red circuits. That's the kind of builds I always do. I just, in a normal factory, like non-Megabase factory, I do belt cable to red circuits, but personally I wouldn't do it at this speed. Again, it works. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't work. It certainly does work. I just kind of like to share my own perspective and stuff on things. So they did decide to do this. Again, it was probably just easier and more straightforward to do this than it was to try to figure out how to direct insert the cable everywhere and stuff like that. It would make the build a lot messier, that's for sure. And it's not like there's throughput issues or lack of material issues. Like, everything's working, and that's what counts. And then again, so plastic here, green circuit train here, copper here. Gonna be the same on the other side. Coming over, low density structures. We do have some circuit shenanigans going on here, which may be a little above my head. It looks like they're connected to the chest again, which is connected to the light and the inserter. I would assume this is in some form just telling this when to insert or not. Blue circuit, I love the colors, blue circuit train. More of the same here. Well, not the same exactly, but more circuit stuff. And then, these are turning red. So it looks like they're capping it maybe, or like, I was thinking maybe they're trying to make them all load evenly. This is definitely controlling the inserters though, on like when or how much they can insert. So again, rod control units, more red circuits, red science, I think is one of the last ones to look at here. This one's obviously very straightforward, going with vertical belt of copper and gears, and then horizontal belts to output. Very small build. Red science is a really small build in a Megabase. Every time I have built a Megabase, I'm always surprised by how small the red science build is, and green science even for that matter, which is quite nice. Super easy, very straightforward. Low density structures, which require a ton of copper. I was about to say, I bet you they have more than one copper belt feeding these, and they do, because it takes a ton of copper. I'm actually surprised that even 2 belts is enough. So, comes through. Now, this is an expensive train. This has 6,500 low density structures on it. Again, they only stack in 10, so otherwise it would be higher. Using train stop limits throughout the whole thing. They have like this guy here, limited to 1. And I think that's most of the stuff to cover. If I can find it, I want to look at their rocket launching area, which I would assume would be here. So they have 8 silos, which is pretty dang good. For anyone who doesn't know, you do need, unless the devs changed this, I don't think they did, but you need more silos than you would think. I was trying to think of a better way to say that. So if you're making 6,000 science per minute, you need more than 6 silos, because the thing is, even with this fully speeded and productivity modeled and stuff, with the animation, it takes a bit more than a minute to launch the rocket, like to build it, and like through the animation, launching it and getting the science takes more than a minute. So you actually need more than the amount that you would think. So if you are making 6,000 science a minute, you need 8, or maybe you only need 7, but again, for symmetry, they did 8, which I'm totally down with. So that's just, why you see in these Megabases typically more rockets than, or maybe they did do 7. No, they did 8. More rocket size than you think. And this is satisfying. I'm glad we got to catch this. Oh man, that is satisfying. Boom, launching 8 rockets at a time. I'm really, really sad that devs took away the rocket launch counter. I still don't understand why they did that. I would really like to see how many rockets this has launched. We can kind of see by seeing like how much white science has been produced. I guess it kind of depends how much of a buffer there is of it. We could also look at satellites consumed, although I have heard there was some sort of bug with that or something, so that may not be entirely accurate. But while we're on that topic, let's go ahead and talk about production. So if we look over 10 minutes, you can see they are actually doing more than 6,000 science a minute. It's about 6.5 for the majority of these. The lowest being 6.1, at least for 10 minutes, for green science. Usually, I think 10 hours is a solid thing to get a good idea. And this is where you can really see 6,000, actually slightly less for blue science. Oh, and then 6,000 throughout here. So I think 10 hours is a really solid place to get an idea of, like true potential of science production and general production. So we can see generally an average of 426,000 iron a minute, 342,000 copper a minute, which is a lot. Almost 200,000 green circuits a minute, 56,000 steel a minute, 45,000 red circuits a minute, which is really crazy to think about. Tons of oil products, 6.6 thousand blue circuits a minute. And there's 172 hours on this base. If we go ahead and do load game, this is an autosave, but it's basically 172 hours on this map, which is really impressive. Have all this belt and have this far science done in that amount of time. If we look at all time and look at the science consumed, it's a lot, guys. It is a lot. 53 million basically of most of these sciences, except purple because they did some research that didn't require purple, and military, which I'm not really sure where military is on here. 3.4 million, so much less, obviously. Really no need to do many military sciences without the biters. But over 50 million of every science done. Over 1.5 billion iron, a billion copper, 760, over 3/4 billion electronic circuits, 235 million red circuits, 124 million gears, tons and tons of stuff, 41 million engines. I want to look at, so this is science consumption. If we look here at 53 million space science, this is consumed, so we could potentially get an idea of roughly how many rockets they've launched by dividing this, which I'm going to do on a calculator because I don't want to make a mistake and sound like a complete idiot. So 53 million, make sure I have this correct, divided by 1,000. I want to say it's like 53,000. Yeah, okay. So 53,000 rockets launched, which is pretty crazy. We've seen higher, but this is near the top, 53,000-ish. Again, there could be some miscalculations in here. Maybe there's a lot of buffer, so on and so forth. Without the actual rocket launch thing, we can't tell for sure, but I'd say around 53,000 rockets launched, which is pretty ridiculous. Looking at power, if it weren't obvious already, they're using solar. Nearly 1 million solar panels here to support this base, which consumes about 35 gigawatts of power. A few less accumulators, obviously, due to the ratio needed there. Unsurprisingly, the highest power consumer is the beacons, assemblers, furnaces. There's no roboport. There's 0 roboports here. This is actually a very simple looking power grid here. They're using 256 labs, over 4,500 miners, and so yeah, 8 silos, 96 refineries, 41,000 inserters. Pretty straightforward there. One other thing I want to touch on we didn't look at was the refueling. Well, this is accumulator production stuff, but what they have for refueling I really like. We saw this on another map a while ago, where they actually have the refueling. I guess this isn't quite the main line. It's kind of the main line, but it's like a split off, I think, specifically for refueling or for bypassing. And I kind of consider it part of the main line. So then it splits off, and we have the refuel train that just drops off here. And then it belts it over to where the trains are, being refueled, and all the way across, all the way to the other side. And this, is basically here for every single build. And I think this is a really cool way of doing it. When I made my Megabase, I had the trains kind of go almost into the builds. Having this kind of just, jaunt off the main line and a pull off here is really, really nice. I think it's very simple, very straightforward. And they are, they are controlling this on and off, turning it on and off based on how much fuel is here. This is a very simple use of the circuit network, which is a really good use of it. Pretty much as simple as you can get. Just reading the chest and saying disable the station if it's above a certain amount. I would imagine if it's like equal to or greater than 10 maybe, or 5. But you can see this is disabled because it's at or above the amount that they've set. And this is usually a really good way to go with fuel stations. You could use the train limit, but I think for fuel, this is definitely actually a more reliable way, in my opinion. And it just works really well, because in the fuel train, we'll just kind of only go, obviously, to stations that are enabled and just cycle its way through to whatever stations need the fuel automatically based on which ones are on or off. And there we go. So that's the base, non-rectangular, absolutely awesome, amazing base. Very impressive production-wise, aesthetically. I really like a lot of the techniques used here. The rail system, I think, is really cool. It is city block. I didn't mention it, but it should be pretty obvious, I think. Basically a city block design. I really like the train size as well. The large trains seem to work quite well. We've seen a very diverse amount of train sizes when we look at maps. Like Derpamuse, which was, in general, I would say a somewhat similar design. Obviously not exact by any means, but Derpamuse actually used really small trains. If you remember, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that there were like 1-2 trains or something. And then this is, kind of the polar opposite. This is 2 trains. And it's just kind of cool to see the differences on how they work and stuff. I don't necessarily think one works better than the other. Maybe in some cases, one will work better than the other. But it's just cool to see two awesome mega bases that, in kind of city block-ish design type, builds that use very different train sizes and stuff like that. So very cool to see. I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. More base tours to come. I am pretty backlogged. I was looking through all of my chat logs and stuff trying to find them. I think I have, I want to say at least like 4, maybe I think more like 5 base tours after this that I need to do. But by all means, if you have a cool, unique base, mega base, just something really unique you want me to look at, definitely let me know. Discord is the best way to contact me. That's how all these folks contacted me. And we can talk. Really, the only thing is I do really prefer to not do heavily modded bases. I have done some, like I've done a Factorio 2 base. Something like that's fine, but I do prefer to stay away from like insanely modded bases, if at all possible. But definitely, if it's interesting, cool, different, or huge mega base, definitely send it over. Or if you have a base you'd like me to review, like I did with Laxmantums, where I actually go in and critique stuff, definitely send that over as well. Contact me. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. A like is much appreciated. If you did enjoy, if you are new to the channel, welcome, and feel free to subscribe. Keep up with all the content, turn on notifications, and I would love to hear your thoughts down below. But until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.